80,000 people went silent in under 3 seconds. Not because the lights went out, not because something went wrong with the sound. The music stopped because Michael Jackson, mid-song, mid-breath, in front of the largest crowd of his tour, lowered his microphone and looked directly at a woman in the VIP section who had been mocking him for the past 10 minutes. Security was already moving toward her. The crowd was already booing. He raised one hand and stopped all of it. Then he walked toward her. And what he did next is something no one in that stadium had ever seen a performer do, before or since. It was September 15th, 1991, the Forum in Los Angeles. Michael was deep into his Dangerous World Tour, and that night everything had been perfect. Every move, every note, 80,000 people locked into something that felt less like a concert and more like a single living thing breathing in unison. Then came human nature. The lights softened. The production stepped back. Michael walked to the front of the stage for the song's most intimate moment, the part where he stopped performing and simply shared. And that's when a woman in the VIP section stood up. Her name was Rebecca Martinez, 35 years old, an entertainment executive who had built her entire professional reputation on saying loudly and without apology what others kept to themselves. She hadn't come as a fan. Her agency had provided the tickets. From the very first song, she had been making cutting remarks to the people around her, her voice low at first, then less so. "This is all manufactured," she kept saying. "Look at these people. They're worshiping someone who's completely lost touch with reality." Her companions had laughed at first, then gone quiet, then tried to settle her down. But Rebecca was past the point of settling. Something had been building in her all evening. Months of frustration, a year she hadn't processed, a pain that had been sitting just below the surface looking for a way out. And it had found one. The wrong one. The most public one imaginable. As Michael began singing about the desire to connect across all the distances that separate people, Rebecca stood up and spoke loudly enough for 3 sections to hear her. "Look at him, trying to be so deep, so meaningful. It's all an act. He's performing vulnerability like it's just another dance move." People around her stopped watching the stage. A security guard appeared at the edge of her row. She ignored him. "He's just a child star who never figured out how to be a real person," she continued, her voice rising with the momentum of someone who has gone too far to go back. "There is nothing real happening on that stage." She began mimicking him, his voice, his mannerisms. The gentle, unguarded quality of his stage presence turned into mockery, into pantomime, into a small, cruel performance designed to make something genuine look ridiculous. The security guard was speaking into his radio. The crowd around Rebecca had gone from uncomfortable to hostile. And on the stage, 100 feet away, the music stopped. The silence that fell over the Forum was the kind that has physical weight. 80,000 people holding their breath simultaneously, all of them sensing, without being told, that something was happening that had never happened before and might never happen again. Michael walked to the edge of the stage. The security guards were still moving toward Rebecca. He raised his hand. They stopped. The booing crowd went quiet. Everyone stopped. And Michael Jackson looked at the woman who had just spent 10 minutes tearing him apart in front of 80,000 people and spoke. "Ma'am." His voice was calm, completely without anger. The voice of someone who has arrived, fully and without reservation, in the present moment. "I can hear you, and I want you to know that's okay. Everyone has the right to their opinion." The crowd erupted in boos again. Rebecca felt it in her chest. Not just the volume, but the weight of 80,000 people turning against her at once. She felt embarrassment and defiance rise in her simultaneously, and the defiance won because defiance was the only thing she knew how to reach for. "I'm just saying what everyone is thinking," she called back. "This whole sensitive, vulnerable artist thing, it's just an act." Michael raised his hand again. The crowd went quiet again. "Please," he said to them, gently but with the unmistakable quality of an instruction. "Let her speak. She has something she wants to say. Maybe we should listen." The crowd had been ready to be his army. He asked them instead to be his witnesses. "Ma'am," he continued, his eyes steady on her face, "you said this is all an act. Can I ask you something?" A pause. The pause of someone genuinely thinking, not performing thought. "What would authentic emotion look like to you? What would real vulnerability actually be?" Rebecca opened her mouth. Nothing came. The question was so specific, so sincere, so completely outside anything she had prepared for, that every response she had rehearsed dissolved before it reached her lips. She was standing in front of 80,000 people with her armor cracking and no idea what was underneath it. "I just think you're performing emotions instead of actually feeling them," she said finally, quieter now, less certain. "I understand," Michael said. "That's a fair concern." He paused in the way of someone choosing not between truth and a comfortable lie, but between which true thing to offer first. "Can I share something with you about where this song actually comes from?" And then, without waiting for her answer, in a way that surprised everyone present, including his own band and crew, he told her the truth. "I've spent my entire life being criticized," he said. His voice had become something quieter and more private, though it reached every corner of that enormous room. "Called artificial, called manufactured, called strange. Everything you just called me tonight, I've heard it before, many times. And for a long time, it made me angry, defensive. It made me want to disappear." A pause. "But I learned something. When someone needs to mock, when someone needs to tear something down rather than simply walk away from it, it's almost never really about the thing they're attacking. It's about something that's hurting inside of them, something that hasn't found another way out." He looked at her across the 100 feet of space between the stage and her row. The forum was so silent that what he said next arrived as clearly as if they were alone in a small room. "I don't know what you brought into this building tonight, ma'am. I don't know what's been hurting you, but whatever it is, whatever makes tearing someone else down feel like relief, I understand it, and I forgive you for it." The last four words landed in the silence, and the silence received them completely. Rebecca Martinez's face did something it had not done in a very long time. Something shifted beneath the surface, slowly, fundamentally, in the place that all her professional sharpness and carefully constructed armor had been built specifically to protect. Her eyes filled. Not dramatically, the quiet, involuntary tears of someone who has been found in the exact place they most needed someone to look, and least expected anyone to. "I wasn't trying to hurt you personally," she said. Her voice was almost unrecognizable from the voice that had been carrying across 3 sections 20 minutes earlier. I get tired of things that feel fake. I've been going through a hard time, and I've been taking it out on things that don't deserve it." A pause in which something in her face shifted, permanently. "On people who don't deserve it. I'm sorry. I was wrong." It was not a polished apology, not the kind people make when they want to be seen making it. It was the kind that costs something, the kind that arrives only when the armor is completely gone and there is nothing left between you and the truth of what you did, except the truth itself. Michael looked at her for a long, quiet moment. "Real authenticity," he said, "isn't about being perfect. It isn't about never making mistakes. It's about being honest about your struggles admitting when you've been wrong, and choosing to respond to difficulty with grace instead of the first weapon you can reach. He paused. You just did all three of those things in front of 80,000 people. That took more courage than anything else that's happened in this building tonight. The applause that followed was not concert applause. It was something warmer and far less controlled. The sound of 80,000 people moved somewhere they had not bought tickets to go, by a man who had every reason to fight back and had chosen, instead, to understand. Michael stepped closer to the edge of the stage, as close as he could get to where Rebecca was standing. The distance between them was still 50 feet, but something in his movement made it feel like a room with two people in it. You called my emotions an act, he said. I want to share something real with you right now, in this moment, in front of everyone. He paused, not for effect, but because what he was about to say cost something. Your words hurt me. They stung because they touched insecurities I've carried my entire life. The fear that people don't see the real me, that they only see a performance, that behind everything I do, there's nothing genuine. His voice didn't waver. I've never said that out loud on a stage before. The forum held that confession the way a room holds something fragile, carefully, without moving. But here's what else I'm feeling right now, Michael continued. Compassion. Because I know that when a person needs to attack, they're usually fighting something inside themselves that has nothing to do with the person they're attacking. And I'm feeling grateful because you've given me a chance to do something I believe in, but don't always find easy. To respond to pain with understanding instead of defensiveness. Rebecca was crying now. Not the quiet, controlled tears from before. Something deeper, the kind that come from a place a person has kept locked for a long time. I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking open on the words. You're right. I've been going through something really difficult, and I've been taking it out on people who don't deserve it. I was wrong. Michael didn't hesitate. Thank you, he said, not just for the apology, but for your honesty about what's actually going on. That took real courage, more than you know. He turned to face the entire stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, what just happened between this woman and me is more real than anything I could sing for you tonight. She stood up in front of 80,000 people and admitted she was wrong. She told the truth about her pain. That is not weakness. That is one of the hardest things a human being can do. The applause that filled the forum then was different from anything that had come before it. It wasn't the applause of fans cheering for their favorite performer. It was the sound of 80,000 people recognizing something in Rebecca, in Michael, in themselves, that they hadn't expected to find at a concert on a Tuesday night in September. Ma'am, Michael said, turning back to her one last time, would you like to stay? Not as a critic, as someone who belongs here, same as everyone else. Because that's what this song has always been about. We're all struggling with human nature, every single one of us, and every single one of us is worthy of compassion. Rebecca nodded. She couldn't speak. There was nothing left to say that words were large enough to hold. Michael smiled, the private, unguarded smile of someone who is genuinely happy, not for the cameras or the crowd, but for the simple fact of what had just happened between two people in a room of 80,000. The band came back in, the lights softened again, and human nature resumed, not from the beginning, but from exactly where it had stopped, as if the interruption had not been a disruption at all, as if it had been, all along, the most essential part of the song. Rebecca Martinez drove home from the forum that night as someone different from the person who had driven in. Not different in the vague, temporary way of someone who has been inspired by a good performance. Different in the structural sense. Something had shifted in her that was not going to shift back. She sat in her car in the parking lot for a long time after the crowd had gone, in the flat overhead light of an empty lot, and she thought about the year she had been having. The relationship that had ended badly in February, the professional frustrations she had nowhere to put, the armor she had spent so long building that she had forgotten it was armor, had started to believe it was simply who she was. She thought about the way Michael Jackson had looked at her, not with contempt, not with the righteous anger she had earned, with the patient, careful attention of someone genuinely trying to see past the behavior to the person behind it. He had seen her more clearly in 30 seconds than most people had in years. In the weeks that followed, she began therapy, left entertainment criticism within the year, retrained as a mediator, a conflict resolution specialist who worked with people and organizations stuck in disputes that had calcified around old pain. She was, by every account, exceptional at it. Her colleagues noted something specific about her approach, an unusual ability to sit with someone who was being hostile or contemptuous and look past the hostility to what was driving it, to ask, quietly, what was really going on, to receive cruelty with curiosity rather than its mirror image. Nobody who knew her story needed to ask where she had learned it. She had walked into the forum that night to judge something and left having been examined herself. The difference was that the examination hadn't been cruel. It had been the most disarming thing imaginable. Kind. The story spread through the industry the way significant things spread, person to person, through people who had been in the room or knew someone who had, carrying the specific weight of something that is true and that matters and that people feel the need to pass forward. Psychologists began referencing it. Educators began using it. Diana Ross, who had known Michael for decades, said something in an interview that people repeated for years afterward. That night, he didn't just perform, he demonstrated. He showed everyone watching what it actually looks like to transform hostility into something else. Not by being passive, not by pretending nothing happened, but by choosing to understand instead of retaliate. That's not instinct, that's discipline. That's character. Rebecca maintained a correspondence with Michael for years after that night. Letters, occasionally calls, the careful, honest connection of two people who had met each other in an extraordinary moment and felt a responsibility to what had passed between them. He wrote to her once, "I think about that evening sometimes. Not with any pain, I want you to know that. I think about it because it reminded me why the songs exist. Not to be performed, to be true. You found that truth the hard way, and I think that means you understand it better than most." She kept that letter. She keeps it still. When Michael died in June of 2009, Rebecca spoke at a memorial gathering. She stood at the microphone with the stillness of someone who has learned that presence is more powerful than performance. And she said what she had been saying for 18 years, refined by all that time into something close to complete. "He could have destroyed me that night in front of 80,000 people," she said. "The crowd was ready. The moment was ready. His anger would have been completely justified. Instead, he stopped everything, the music, the security, the crowd, and he asked me a question, not to challenge me, to understand me." She paused. "He didn't do it for me. He did it because that was who he was. Because somewhere in all the years of being judged and reduced and dismissed, he had learned that the most powerful response to cruelty is not its reflection. It's its opposite." Another pause. "I became a different person because of 30 minutes in a concert hall. Because one man chose understanding over retaliation. That choice didn't just change my life. It showed everyone in that room, and everyone who has heard this story since, what real strength actually looks like." Most of us will never stand in front of 80,000 people, But every one of us has stood, or will stand, in front of someone who is hurting us. Someone whose words sting. Someone whose cruelty finds the exact places where we are most tender. And in that moment, every instinct we have will point in the same direction. Defend yourself. Fight back. Make them feel what they made you feel. Michael Jackson, on a September night in 1991, pointed somewhere else entirely. He showed us that the person attacking you is almost always carrying something heavier than the attack itself. That cruelty, at its root, is usually just pain that hasn't found a better exit. And that the single most powerful thing you can do, more powerful than any comeback, any retaliation, any public humiliation you could deliver in return, is to look at that person and ask, genuinely and without armor, what's really going on? The song was called Human Nature. It asked why we treat each other the way we do, why kindness is so hard and cruelty so available, what it would take to choose differently. He didn't just sing it that night, he answered it. Think about the last time someone came at you with cruelty, a harsh word, a public attack, a moment designed to make you feel small. What if, instead of defending yourself, you had asked them one question? What are you really going through? How different might that moment have been? For them, for you, for everyone watching? And what would it take for you to try that, just once, the next time it happens?